A moment of silence for the Sony Xperia Z line. And now their new line is the Xperia X. It's not like they stopped making phones, they just changed the name. I own the Xperia Z2 and Z3. The top reasons I got both of those phones was for 1, the front-facing speakers, 2, the camera, and 3, the battery. If you follow my videos, none of this should be surprising. Ultimately, for me, these phones laid to rest because the speakers weren't as loud as my previous Moto X's or my Nexus 6, which was also a Motorola. I also had issues with how loud the earpiece was when I was talking on the phone. It was never quite loud enough. Battery and camera were excellent though, I just needed a more well-rounded phone. But this year at Mobile World Congress 2016, instead of Sony debuting the Z6, they introduced the new Xperia X line. And instead of having multiple phones in different size displays, Sony introduced a 5-inch phone, and only a 5-inch display phone in 3 different trims. The Xperia XA, the Xperia X, and the Xperia X Performance. Think of it like a 90s Nissan or Honda. You have a lower end model like the Civic EX or a Nissan Sentra, and then something a little more premium or a little more sporty like the Civic EX or a Nissan Sentra SE. And then you have the top of the line version, which would be a Civic Si or a Sentra SER. Yeah, I know, these are compact econo boxes, but this is what I grew up with, so just bear with me. So like a car, when you pick the top of the line trim or the top of the line model, you get the better engine, the better suspension, better interior, better amenities. And that's kind of like how the Sony X line works. And in this case, this is going to be the Xperia X Performance. All right, let's break it down. All 3 phones share 5-inch IPS LCD displays. From the pictures, it looks like it practically has no bezel, thumbs up in my book. The Xperia XA has a 720p resolution, while the Xperia X and X Performance sport 1080p displays. The XA runs a MediaTek Helio P10 CPU with a Mali T860 MP2 GPU, which honestly I know nothing about. But this is what the base Xperia XA gets you. The X, a Snapdragon 650 with an Adreno 510, and the X Performance, a Snapdragon 820 with an Adreno 530, top of the line. 2 gigs of RAM for the XA, 3 gigs of RAM for the X and the X Performance. The XA starts with 16 gigs of internal storage. I don't know if it'll carry more, probably not. While the X and X Performance both start with 32 gigs. But all 3 have microSD slots for expandable storage. The XA has a 13 megapixel rear camera, while the X and X Performance both have 23 megapixel rear cameras with higher optics than the base model. The X and X Performance should have very good performing cameras. Battery-wise, the XA will have a 2300 mAh battery, the X a 2620 mAh battery, and the X Performance a 2700 mAh battery. I'd imagine all 3 of these would perform great with its smaller 5-inch display. The XA has 1 bottom-facing speaker, while the X and X Performance both have dual front-facing stereo speakers. The X and X Performance will also have fingerprint readers on the side, while the XA will not. All should be running Android Marshmallow 6.0.1. Do I want one? Yeah. I've been looking for a top-of-the-line phone in a smaller size display that can compete with the bigger flagships, the bigger size flagships. And the Sony Xperia X Performance checks off a lot on that list. Top-of-the-line processor, great camera, great battery, front-facing stereo speakers, fingerprint reader. Well, on paper it looks good. I really won't know until I get one and can test it out. The Xperia X line of phones is slated to come out this summer, which, wow, it's almost March. It's only a few months from now. God, where does the time go?